That's good.
I think it's due for break. All right. I would like to call to order the Tuesday, April 4th meeting of the Monmouth City Council and ask our city recorder, Phyllis Bowman, for the roll call, please.
Councillor Belts.
Here.
Councillor Carey.
Here.
Councillor Lopez.
Here.
Councillor McKeel.
Present.
Councillor Oberst.
Here.
Councillor Salinas Oliveros is excused. Mayor Kuntz.
I am present. And Councillor Belts will lead us in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That brings us to our consent calendar tonight. On our regular council agenda, we will have an urban renewal this evening. Our consent calendar for the council consists of our last meeting minutes, so that was March 21st, and certainly willing to accept any corrections or additions. Otherwise, you know what to do.
I'd move approval.
Thank you, Councillor Carey, for the motion, and Councillor Oberst for the second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Seeing none, we move on to public comments. This time for items not scheduled for a public hearing, of which we don't have one this evening. But I don't believe we have anyone here in the audience. Phyllis, was anything submitted for us or anyone online?
There was nothing submitted, Mayor Kuntz. Oh, and there is no one online that I know of.
This evening, we welcome one of our partners to visit with us, and tonight I will call up Ben Stange. We're fortunate to have him as our Polk County Fire Chief with a presentation this evening, and he has with him a guest. Yes, you have to get up there too.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Kuntz, members of the council. My name is Ben Stange. I'm the Fire Chief at Polk County Fire District Number 1. With me is our Board President, Mike Lipsmeyer. He's rounding out his second 4-year term on our board, and will hopefully be joining us for a third 4-year term. So he's been with us for a lot of decisions, obviously, over the past 8 years. I'm before you today to talk about a levy that will be on the ballot for the residents of Monmouth. Real quickly, I know most of you are pretty familiar with our district, but just to remind you, we're a special district organized under ORS 478. So like every fire district in the state of Oregon, we have a 5-member board of directors. We have the ability to levy taxes, which is one of the few ways that we have to raise revenue. And that's, again, why we're here before you today. So we serve 185 square miles of fire response and 206 of EMS or medical response. That includes Monmouth and Independence, which are primarily served by our station across from Roth's there, that many of you have been to. We should have walked in some pancake smell just to make everybody feel at home. But that's a combination staffed career and volunteer. And then we have our all volunteer stations out in Buena Vista, Airlie, and Petey for the rural parts of the community we serve. Our staffing, just to talk about that a little bit, we have administration, obviously, myself as the fire chief. We have a fire marshal who works quite a bit with the city of Monmouth, as well as with our school district on public education. We have a training and operations chief that many of you know, our deputy chief, Neil Olson. And then we also have a fantastic EMS chief who just came on board about a year ago, Frank Ehrmantraut, who has just done a lot for our EMS service delivery. The day-to-day response is really made up of the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week emergency responders. We were staffed with 4 firefighter paramedics a day. So that's 12 total. The way that works is they work 48 hours at a time. So 48 on, 96 off. So they work 48, then the next shift comes for 48, then the next shift for 48. So it works out to a 56-hour work week for each one. So it takes 12 people to have 4 people on duty, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Obviously, 4 people isn't enough for big events, car crashes, natural gas leaks, structure fires, field fires, things like that. And that's why we rely on our volunteers. We have about 55 volunteers right now who respond from their homes. 48 of those engage in firefighting. There's another half dozen who do sort of support services for us. But they're used, and I'll talk a little bit about how they're used, but they're used for those big calls, and it takes them a little while longer to get there, but we really need that extra staffing as we get deeper into incidents. And to talk about incidents, I kind of want to talk about our 2 separate types of incidents. We'll talk about EMS, emergency medical services, our ambulances, and then I'll talk about kind of everything else as the fire stuff. So first, the fire. It's not a majority of our calls, but they are very demanding when it comes to manpower. We try to handle all of the kind of smaller, sometimes people refer to bells and smells, right? Like fire alarms and people who smell things. Those low acuity calls, we try to do that with our paid staff because we know our volunteers can't be responding to the station multiple times a day, every single day. So we try to handle those types of fire calls with our staff that we have there. For structure fires, our goal is to have, and this has been a goal for a long time, 6 people on scene in 9 minutes in Monmouth and Independence. 6 people in 9 minutes. What that allows us, so legally we have to go inside of an IDLH, or immediately dangerous to life and health. OSHA says we have to have 4 people on scene. We have to have 2 people inside, and 2 people, since they're in an area that's can't sustain life in, we have to have 2 people outside ready to go in to help them. So that's 4 of them. And then we need somebody to obviously pump them water, and then another person in command to make sure everybody's being safe, get more resources, all that. So 6 people in 9 minutes. That really relies on people at the station because we can't expect that a volunteer in the middle of the night is going to get up, get all their clothes on, get in their car, drive to the station, park their car, get their turnouts on, get on the rig, get somebody else, drive there, pull up, and get there in 9 minutes. Just not possible, which is why we want 14 people there in 27 minutes, and by then we can get some volunteers. But that's really our staffing for the fire that we shoot for. That's on the fire side. The EMS side, and you all know this is really what we measure ourselves in because the fires happen pretty rarely. We treated over 2,300 patients last year. So the EMS side is something that we have the data to see where we are, where we stand. These are our heart attacks. These are our emphysema patients. These are our hip fractures, all those things that we're going on day in and day out. Our goal for that response in Monmouth and Independence, we want to have an ALS, an ambulance with at least 1 paramedic on it, on scene in 8 minutes, 90% of the time. That's our standard. That's also in the county's ASA plan. And it's also a standard that OHA has when it comes to trauma for population densities like that. So again, that's 8 minutes, 90% of the time. And the 90%, and you all know this, you kind of have a diminishing return, right? If you staffed for 100%, you'd have a lot of wasted man hours and everything. So 90% is a fair target to shoot for. We'll talk about what we're hitting and what we're not. So, and I'll also point out, so we have at least 1, a lot of times 2 paramedics on all of our ambulances. And the paramedic, if you're not familiar with EMS certifications, there's an EMT basic, EMT advanced, intermediate. The paramedic is the highest level. These are the people who are doing all the cardiac drugs, can treat all the heart monitor stuff with, shocking electricity, pacing, intubations. If you've seen Saving Private Ryan with the chest, the needle decompression and all that type of stuff, they can do it all. And so we have those people on all of our ambulances responding to all of our EMS calls. So we've talked a little bit about the fire stuff, the 6 people on scene in 9 minutes, and then the EMS, an ambulance on scene within 8 minutes. So might say, okay, so you already have a levy at 19 cents, and if you saw what is going to be on the ballot, it's 78. So it's a big increase. And so the question is, well, why is that? Obviously, 10 years ago, we were consistently running 1,900 calls for service. A decade later, last year, we ran over 3,600 calls for service. So that's an 85% increase. We've almost doubled in the last 10 years. Now, why that matters so much is most of those, as I said, 75% of those are medical calls. Medical calls are very time consuming. We're typically taking an ambulance to Dallas, to Corvallis, to Salem, to somewhere else. That's out of service. We can't come back for them in a little while. We are committed. So we, in that same amount of time, when we've increased that call volume by that much, our overlapping calls. 10 years ago, 18% of our calls overlapped with one another. This last year was 43% of our calls overlapping with one another. So we hit this spot. So I want to go back to talking about one of our, I think the most, personally to me, the most important performance standard, which is to have an ambulance on scene for an emergency call within 8 minutes, 90% of the time. Our station is in a fantastic location. Our ambulances, when we had a 911 call in Monmouth or Independence that was an emergency medical call, we were 92% of the time last year, we had an ambulance, one of our ambulances on scene for an ambulance call in Monmouth and Independence, 92% of the time within 8 minutes. The problem was, that was when it was our ambulance. 359 times we had ambulances dispatched from other jurisdictions, from Dallas, from Salem, from Albany. The city of Monmouth, Kaiser was here 3 or 4 times in this city with their ambulance last year. So once we add in other people's ambulances, we only had an ambulance on scene in Monmouth and Independence within 8 minutes, 83% of the time. We were fully staffed all year. All of our vacant positions were filled all year. It wasn't a problem with, oh, there just aren't enough qualified candidates. Nope, we had people staffed the whole time. All of our positions were filled. It's simply that when you get too many calls and they start overlapping, we have to be able to put additional units in service in order to absorb that call volume. So that's where the conversation has come up about, so what do we do for that levy? So now I'd like to talk about what the levy is aimed at doing. And I want to start with what I think is a really important statement, which is that this levy does nothing to increase any administrational personnel. This is all directly related to 911 response. So we've actually taken our receptionist from a full-time position to a half-time position. We used to outsource our payroll. We're now doing that internally. All of this is focused on our 911 responders. So the first and largest thing that this levy would be focused on doing is adding firefighter EMT basics to our responders. Full-time firefighter EMT basics. So increasing our staff there. The second thing that it would do is we would, again, increase staffing, but in a more targeted way. We got a grant last year through the Oregon State Fire Marshal's office to add seasonal staffing over the summer. This proved to be a fantastic program for us. We hired some of our college-age volunteers, some of our self-employed volunteers. They came on for 1, maybe 2 months, and we would just schedule them for the peak hours during the day when our call volumes spike at a time when the fire risk is the highest. So when we had the fire up on Vita Springs, we had seasonal staff already here. When people were getting mobilized around the state, we had seasonal staff already working. And then when that time came and the call volume started easing and we were out of fire season in October, they all went back to school, went back to their regular employment, things like that. We really want to continue that program because we saw a ton of value in it, especially for what the cost was. And I'm very thankful we have total support of our firefighters union. I mean, they saw it too. Like, hey, we want people here 365 days a year, but we have this seasonal issue and we need that addressed. So that's the second thing. So the full-time 365 days a year people, then the sort of seasonal people, getting them during the day, during the fire season, some of those volunteers of ours, and giving them that opportunity. And then the last thing is we will have 2 ambulances that come to the end of their service life during this levy. And I don't know if you saw the material. I believe I got it in. I hope you were able to see it. ambulances these days, well, right now, unfortunately, hopefully it doesn't increase too much in the next 5 years, but right now they're about $250,000. I think it says in the literature, they're like little ER rooms. But I was thinking about some of the ER rooms, and when a kid cuts his hand, the ER room's pretty minimal that they send him to. We only have one ER room, and it has to be able to do everything. So from the suction units to the oxygen delivery to restraint systems, refrigerator, medication lockers, just so many different things that these have to be able to do. So they are expensive units. So again, those are the 3 items: the additional staffing, then the seasonal staffing in the summer for some of our volunteers, and then lastly the ambulance replacement. Those are the 3 focuses. I'll see if President Lipsmeyer has anything to add, and then see if there are any questions.
I'll just comment to build on what Ben said. The board took a lot of time thinking about this. It's not like, oh yeah, let's just go for a big number. It's like we were arguing amongst ourselves, what is the minimal number that we can get by? And Ben, Mr. Excel here, has the data, and we can look at it and it's like, okay, this is the model where our calls are going. This is where the taxes are going. This is all these attributes that interplay with one another, and we ended up with 78 cents per thousand. And we don't take that lightly. We didn't take that lightly. We know that that's a burden, but at the same time, you got to be able to respond to the car accident. You got to be able to respond to your elderly neighbor who falls and gets hurt. You got to be able to respond to the cardiac case. You got to be able to respond to the fires, the seasonal wildland stuff. And with the overlapping calls, we're just not cutting it, and it's going to get a lot worse with the growth in the area and the inflation and the wages. It just does not stack up. It is a easy solution except to go for a levy, as which we're describing here. So just for your perspective, we've given it a lot of thought.
And if I can just, I think the board looked at, I want to say 5 or 6 different options of what to do. And of course, everything from what if we just let it expire and didn't do anything? What would that look like? And that's, how, and I hate to say, I hate to say it, but yeah, we won't go. But then, of course, the obvious one was, well, what would it take to continue what we currently are doing? And we have that number. We looked at that number, and the board thought about that number, but there was what the board kept repeating was, but if we're not meeting the standard that we have, that the county has, and that the state has, how can we go for 11 to sustain something that we know didn't work in 2022 when that's what we're going to be working off of in 2027 or 2028? So that was, just to highlight what President Lipsmeyer is saying. It was
it was a good considered conversation. Ben's got wonderful models of what if we do this, what if we do that. We could war game them out and see what that's the impact is to the community and what our anticipated response time would be. And are these models perfect out there in 27? Of course not, but it's I think there's a lot of good thought that's gone into it, and this would provide us with that level of service we've come to expect without calling for help from Albany, from Kaiser. We just can't. You cannot service the calls that come in from those remote.
I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Anyone? Councillor Belson and Councillor Carey.
Do you see some of the rise in calls also because of our aging population within the community?
Yes. An interesting, we're doing a an update to the ambulance service area plan for the county. The county's in charge of deciding what ambulance service provides service where. And so there's a third party that was contracted with. And I had to chuckle a little bit because they had what they expect the call volume to be, in 10 years. And it's based on, population increases. So going back to my 10-year thing that I was talking about, 10 years ago, we received 8 911 calls for every 100 people. Last year, we received 13 911 calls for every 100 people. So this is not something that is due to the increase in population. It is due to the usage, the utilization rate of the population. Thank you.
Younger, darn it.
Well, yeah, and not just that. I know I've talked to the chief before about people accessing medical care, and with fewer and fewer people having access to primary care physicians, particularly in our own community, let alone our county and state, this is their health care. This is who they call. So, Councilor Carey, go ahead.
Chief, how many ambulances do we currently have?
We have 3 physical ambulances. We have, with the 4 people, we're able to staff 2 ambulances at a time. Now, we do our best. I actually drove an ambulance for a few minutes yesterday. That shouldn't make you happy. But we do our best with what we can. When we can get that third one running, whether that's a combination of volunteers, chief officers, or whatever, we do our best to get that on the road. That is a physical asset that we have, but typically we have 2 available. Now, that second one goes out, that first fire engine is completely out of service, and any fire responses or additional EMS responses are going to require, if it's outside of sort of the daytime, it's going to require volunteers coming from home to get on a rig to go and service that initial care.
And 2, and this is the thing I talk to the chief of police often when we get into the budget cycle. A way to perhaps schedule these. I mean, to develop a replacement plan. I mean, that's your business, but rather than 2 at once, maybe you've got one, in year 1, and then another one in year 4, going forward. Not for this one, but so you don't get all that big bunch at once.
Yeah, so we go every 2 to 3 years. And so there are just within that sort of levy 5-year period, we do expect we try to get about 200,000 miles out. So we track kind of the mileage, and as they're getting closer, get those replacements in the queue. And we try to cycle them so that the mileage kind of stacks up.
Okay. I should have assumed that you were on that. You had 359 times I required an out of town ambulance, I think was the statistic, and because the others were engaged somehow. I was one of those people involved with one of the 3.
Oh, were you?
59. Yeah. And it worked out, but it was delayed considerably. And so I think the idea of adding staffing is a good one. I guess the question I would have, you said you're going to add a firefighter and an EMT.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that because I did talk about the paramedic being sort of the higher level.
Well, and the reason I asked that was there was a difficulty in my instance of the EMT from Dallas being able to administer medications, painkillers, basically. It worked out fine, but if I don't know, can you get another, kick it up a notch? My son's a paramedic, so I'm always repping for paramedics.
I love that. They're hard to come by.
Yeah.
This is where I have to do some juggling with our civil service and our board and whatnot, because honestly, paramedics are undervalued, I think, in the fire service. I think that what they provide, and not to diminish what EMT basics do, but for the increased cost of a paramedic, it is completely worth the money. The 2 issues are, one, finding them. Again, we're fully staffed with paramedics. We have 12, which is fantastic, but most places are not able to do that our size. So very proud of that. Very thankful for that. You know, the other issue, and I don't want to get on a tangent. Paramedic requires an associate's degree and to be in that, which is fine. I think getting into those programs and that whole process, you end up with a workforce. When I look at our workforce, I don't think it's representative of the community we serve. And I think if we were able to, in a responsible way, incorporate some other entry-level positions that we could even support through increasing to a paramedic or something, I think one of the strengths, and I've spoken with the board about it, one of the things that I'd love to be able to do down the road, sorry, this is a total tangent, is instead of, one of the things the fire service has gotten wrong is we basically, almost every department in the state requires you to come in already with a fire certification, which means you were either privileged enough to go volunteer and do it somewhere or go to college for it or whatever, and some sort of EMS licensing thing. And what we don't do, what we could do, it costs a little bit of money to do, but instead of going to these same people who have grown up their whole lives knowing they want to be firefighters, I want to we have that signboard, and one of my goals before I leave on that sign is going to say, no experience necessary, come apply and get people from this community who are going to stay in this community, who are going to serve this community. Because, you know, we have some phenomenal people, and if we're able to support them through that fire and EMS training, I think we can do it. I think that would be a huge value. I think it's a little harder with the paramedic, but I do want to create a way that if we have qualified paramedics and qualified EMTs, then we can weigh those, and the paramedic would obviously be more valuable.
Sure. But the EMT will certainly, the EMT slot will certainly be serviceable and be of value. Final question for me, and this, you know, what kind of we're all very cognizant and have our sort of ears up on homeless population, and that has sort of expanded fairly dramatically in Salem. We're reasonably well, we're in pretty good shape in Polk County, I think. What has been the impact on the Salem Fire Service and EMT, or that EMS, of that increase in homeless population? And might we expect the same should we get a mushrooming effect?
I can't speak to that. I can say I was, just as an example, I was on a call on College Street waiting for an ambulance from Salem. And when they pulled out, the medics had their bulletproof vests on. And I was just, it was just weird. I was like, you're on College Street in Monmouth, you're good. But one of our other board members works for the city of Salem for the fire department, and you know the impacts on them. They stay out of. They have really strict policies on even going in to these areas. Anecdotally, I know a lot of people who work there who it has actually not just Salem, other places with it's causing some people to leave the profession because it's so stressful, so taxing, so dangerous, and it's been really rough on those agencies that are experiencing that.
That board member speaks to. There are certain areas that they do not go into unless they have police support as the lead, and then they go in after. Yeah, that's an example.
Yeah, and that's my son is experienced. You know, he's in a spot where that is sort of the protocol.
Yeah.
Well, good luck. We hope we can be helpful in supporting you all. You guys do good work, and it's much appreciated. And we'll do what we can to support you, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Councilor Lopez.
Thank you. I wanted to thank both of you gentlemen for the way that you serve our community. It's really an incredible asset. I see it out there. I see you all out there, and handful of weeks ago, I had an incident in my home. Um,
Been in town taking photos.
I think I know about it, actually.
yeah,
No, no.
We'd
Not a hit
gone out to dinner and we came home and there was smoke inside. And my wife called and I was rounding up the animals. And I swear it was 2 minutes and y'all had a truck out at our house. And we're pretty close to the station already, but that was really impressive. And again, you served my family well. Fortunately, we were able to get it taken care of, but I really, really deeply thank you and the wonderful folks that work with you for the way that you serve the community. Thank you.
Yes. So I would like to ask if we are interested in lending our full support, basically by consensus to this, so that they can tell others that we do. I know personally, I'll be writing letters. I'll be working to help them, as I said I would when we expanded our urban renewal, thereby depriving them of some potential revenue in the future. So, but I'm hoping that I can speak for us, seeing all nods, that we are absolutely understanding of this, the need, the price, the value we're getting for this is incredible. And again, thank you for all you do, for the great staff you've hired, Chief, and folks that are really becoming a great part of our community and doing good work. So, and thanks for letting us use the station for the trolley.
Yeah.
That was
Let's get a motion on that. I think we could have in minutes. Yeah,
yeah. I'll move.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
This is to endorse the levy.
Yes.
Oh,
I'll second it.
All right, moved and seconded to endorse the Polk County Fire District 1 levy on the upcoming May ballot. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And aye. So you have our full support.
Thank you all. We
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
Unanimous
much.
support
Thank
for
you.
that. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
thanks, Phyllis.
All right. It's the time of year that we recognize Arbor Day. And I would like to read this proclamation. As we are fortunate enough to be a free city, and recognizing Arbor Day is part of that. And whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. I don't think there were that many trees in Nebraska. Whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can be a solution to combating climate change by reducing the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and providing habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes and our city hall, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. Whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of our business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas Monmouth has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its tree planting endeavors, and whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And now, therefore, I, Cecilia L. Kuntz, Mayor of the City of Monmouth, do hereby proclaim April 15th, 2023 as Arbor Day in the City of Monmouth. And I urge all citizens and residents to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all to plant trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of present and future generations. So, yes.
So I'm going to jump the gun on a report because we have a tree board meeting on the 11th, but more importantly, on Saturday the 15th at 1 o'clock at Madrona Park, we will be putting in at least 4 European hornbeams. I spoke with our whole installer who told me that one of the other 2 appears to be dead on the doornail too. So maybe we'll be putting in 5. I don't know. Yeah. So 1 o'clock, do your taxes, come on down.
All right. Thank you. That will be great.
Yep.
Those trees will gladden the
File your taxes electronically so you don't kill a tree.
There you go.
Yes.
And they're not due until the 18th, so you actually have a few
Yeah,
more
you
days.
have a
Good,
couple
you
days
have a
after
couple extra
that.
days.
My heart will be glad.
Oh, thank you for that. So now we have to get some business done. And tonight that consists of a first reading of ordinance 1408, which would enshrine the adoption of our legislative amendment 23-01 that we've been working on. And I'm going to ask Suzanne to give us a staff report on this because there's a teeny tweak, I believe, that she needs to report to us.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, members of the City Council. My name is Suzanne Jeffner, Community Economic Development Director for the City of Monmouth. And as the Mayor mentioned, I'm here tonight to present the staff report for Ordinance 1408. If you'll recall, the Council had a public hearing at your last meeting on March 21st. This was for taking comments and testimony on the adoption of amendments to our city code, specifically titles 17 and 18. That's our subdivision and our zoning ordinance. This is our code assistance project that we have been working quite a bit on over the last few years. So the council at the end of that closed the hearing and then moved to approve the amendments. And so the next step is to adopt an ordinance. And that's what we brought back before you this evening. That's in your packet. There were a couple of minor modifications that were discussed at the last public hearing. One related to the building orientation standard for corner lots in the Main Street district to encourage but not mandate the building entrance be oriented to the street corner. So that change has been incorporated into the draft. And then modification of some of the condition of approval language for type 3 actions has been modified to reflect that that's something that city staff reviews and approves, not that it doesn't come back to the planning commission to verify that. So those changes have been made. As the mayor mentioned, there is one small technical clarification that's come to our attention since the staff report went out. And I have a slide that shows that change. I'll see if I can pull it up here. I was having trouble getting it to show earlier. Oh, let's see. And it's not going on the right screen.
Hello.
What's that? I thought I knew how to do it.
Travel.
Let's see here. Let me try maybe the PowerPoint version of it. Will come up. Oh, that didn't work either.
We want to see vacation pictures.
Yeah, right? You can see some pretty exciting stuff.
Call
there.
Idaho to Delaware.
Let me try that again. Let's see. Share.
She'll never do that again.
Yeah. Glad the pictures actually didn't come up, right? Alrighty. Fingers crossed. Okay.
Was it
There we
resume,
go.
job
Yeah, very
applications?
awkward moment there. Okay, so gonna dive down deep here for a second. This is kind of getting into the planner geek language, but I think it's an important clarification to make well before it's actually adopted. So we have one of the residential design standards that talks about this notion of eyes on the street and the front building facade having windows and doors and balconies and porches and patio openings to make them more visible and engaged with the street, makes it more pedestrian friendly and increases neighborhood watch kind of concerns. So the way we measured that standard, the definition wasn't super clear. And so the red underlined language, and actually I have hard copies of those that I can pass around to if that would be helpful, but I can just go ahead and read that. So we're looking here at the front building facade for residences. And we're measuring their front elevation. So 50% of that has to have these openings. So percent of that building elevation is measured as the percentage of a building wall with doors, porches, balconies, terraces, and or windows, where the building wall is measured as the sum of the vertical plane of all wall areas above grade that are visible on one side of a building. The roof area wall offsets that are perpendicular to the primary rotation of the facade and gable ends below the ridge of the roof and above the eave line are not counted as wall area. So again, this is very technical language that planners look at when we look at building permits, but it's important to be clear on it so that we know that there's not confusion over how it gets interpreted in the future. So we're trying to clean that up and make that as clear as possible with that language. It's not a substantive policy change. Again, just trying to make the language on how to measure the standard a little bit more clear. So again, this is first reading, so the action tonight is to read by title only. The next step would be for staff to bring this back to you with this proposed edit for second reading at your April 18th meeting. And if it would be helpful, I'm happy to, I know that's hard to read up there, so I'm happy to pass a copy of that out too.
Sit on the computer. Okay.
Oh, and you've got it on your
Yeah.
computer? Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody want a hard copy of that as well?
As long as you add a D to measured. Percent
Measured.
elevation is
Oh,
measured,
good. Catch the grammatical.
then I'll approve.
Okay. Thank you for that eagle eye. Yeah. Got it.
All right. We hereby conduct first reading of ordinance number 1408, an ordinance adopting legislative amendment 23-01 to titles 17 and 18 of the Monmouth zoning ordinance relating to subdivisions and partitions and zoning. And that'll come back for the full vote.
And I'd just like to say thanks for staff for entertaining my bizarre house design.
It was
as an
good.
example
It made us look at it a second time.
of how you measure these things. And yeah, I appreciate that, Suzanne.
Yeah. Appreciate all the work on this. It's just a little bit more. All right. That brings us to reports of the city council. And I don't have much for you this evening. You've all been everywhere I've been in the last couple of weeks. As I said at our Polk County breakfast, I feel like I've made a lot of speeches. You know, we broke ground on a skate park and we got those trolleys rolling and so many great and exciting things. And it's just really fun to watch people be excited, right? And even our fabulous topping ceremony on our city hall and getting to make that really historic statement, putting our names on that piece of wood so that it can get lifted up there and become the judges' chambers ceiling that you can't see. Just having folks here for that, right? We had retired staff and we had just community members, we had key communicators, and just seeing people really feel good about this. It was part of sort of one of our motivations for working this hard on these things and for making our board staff work so hard on these things to really increase that sense of pride. And it is just happening. It is happening. So I thank you all for being at all these things and taking time out to come celebrate and cheer. I'll just tell you, Roxanne and I kind of cheated. We were the first ones on the trolley. We snuck down into the public works yard at about 7:45 on Sunday morning and flagged them down and told the Chariots guy, whom we both know, that we wanted to get on. And so, well, we start in Independence. We're supposed to be starting at Independence at 8:00, and we're like,
We're here now.
fine, let us on. So we pulled into Independence at 8:01 at the hotel so they could start their route. But boy, it was fun to see people on there all day and talking. And today we've all talked about seeing people at stops throughout the day. So
Chief Sting mentioned that he's, saw it
Yeah.
go by repeatedly and
Yeah.
people on it every time.
Yep.
very cool. So that's all that. Oh, well, then I will move to reports of council representatives, boards and commissions, and let you know that I have attended a couple of MyNet meetings now. MyNet has really streamlined our reporting. We hear briefly from various functional units to tell us kind of what's going on, how they're doing in build outs, how we're doing in marketing. And things are good, right? They are feeling quite good about that. So I'm happy to report that. MyNet's moving into budget season. We'll be reporting further on that and how some issues on that affect sort of that planning we have to start not only the debt service payments currently, but filling the cities back on starting to repay on the promissory notes that the cities hold for paying long-term debt in the past. And we'll be reporting on that for you as we go into that budget season. Just another note on MyNet, longtime general manager, retired Don Patton, will be leaving our community. He and his wife are moving, sort of going back to where family will be closer to some family members. So if I hear of any sort of opportunities to thank Don and say farewell to him, I'll let you know. But that announcement came.
Do you know when he's leaving, Cease?
Their house is for sale, right?
Okay.
And it came out in our neighborhood news group. So that's all.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. And that's all I have. Other council representatives talking about all the other good stuff volunteers.
I have a question on the trolley.
Yeah.
Will there be, at what point will there be a consideration of the validity of the stop, all the different stops we have right now? Well, how much data are they going to need to affirm that or sort of modify? I don't have any suggestions. I'm just.
So I think the goal was to get the service up and running. We have a series of performance metrics. I don't think we've got a specific measure for whether a stop is working or not, but we wanted to. When I say we, I'm talking about the trolley worker, chariots and cities. So I think we wanted to see the operation, and the original goal was to set stops a quarter mile apart. In some cases, just because of the logistics of what's happening at the place where that next quarter mile occurs, it wasn't possible. And so we had planned to do basically, a survey to try to vet how the stop locations were working, how the service was working generally, and how people's experiences were. So I think the goal was to operate for some months and then check in on it.
Any chance of in the future, big, and maybe it's already there and I just don't know, but tracking of so if you've got the app and you're looking, how far away is the trolley from this stop?
Yes.
Real time.
It'll come.
So the app is the technology we're using for that vehicle locator app is provided by a company called Translock. In the first 2 days of operation, we have had some trouble with the charging of those. The tablets are on the vehicle and the vehicle is not visible. So we're troubleshooting how that will, it's supposed to be, you're supposed to be able to open the app and see where the trolley
Where
is,
you are, where the stop is, and where
and your stop. And so we need to get the app working.
Yeah.
And so, and also have people get used to both using the app, and you can go through the My Trolley website to also get some instructions about how it works. So that's supposed to be up and going as soon as possible.
Sure.
There were a few things I think they noted as Roxanne and I were riding around first thing in the morning with the Chariot's operations supervisor who runs all of their driver operations, and then their transportation planning guy, and they were noticing several things. So we'll work as we go through.
Great.
There's also the opportunity to give feedback on our website. There's an email so that if there's feedback that folks have about everything that you just asked about, the app's not working, what about the stop suggestions. We will also have permanent stop signs that will have QR codes that will link you into the vehicle locator aspect of it, of the app and everything else.
Well, and chariots ultimately will look at things like if traffic flow, and if there was something that was not anticipated with a particular location where a stop was, they didn't realize there'd be significant backup or those kinds of things. Those are the things that the operators will point out and say, hey, here's an issue. And so they will be assessing it all along the way as well.
They also while we were sitting there on it open, they can go into the app and see how many riders are on at any given
They
time
are
and what those
counting,
peak
they are counting the riders as they
Yeah.
come on.
So they have that data as well. And they'll be doing a lot of. They have time to make those.
Shakeout period for sure. Getting started.
So other boards, commissions, groups, meetings, Councilor Lopez and Councilor Oberst.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Earlier you mentioned budget time, and the Homeless Alliance, the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance, will be holding their budget meeting on April 13th at 3 p.m. This will be concurrent with their regularly scheduled meeting time. I also anticipate more firm information out of that meeting regarding the latest governor's executive orders and the MAC groups that have been created to help to coordinate those, and working very closely in tandem with the Homeless Alliance. So it's been a rapidly progressing project, to say the least. A little bit of a scramble in all reality, but ultimately I think that it'll serve our community well, and it's really been fantastic to see, the structure that the Alliance has provided go to work, right? So we didn't have to start from ground zero, and the way that so if you're familiar, the executive order funding, distributing funds throughout the state for housing for homeless individuals, and then in tandem with that, funding for case management, and communities that didn't have their own COC, that were in the remainder of state, did not get this funding through the executive order. So I'm waiting. I'm hoping that those communities do end up getting some level of funding, but it is truly evidence of how critical it was for us to join this at the inception of the Homeless Alliance of the COC. It really laid the groundwork for all of this that we never would have anticipated come about to be possible. So I'm very much looking forward to being able to report back a little bit more firm numbers and firm information on that, and I anticipate I'll have that after that meeting. Also, I met with the Parks and Rec Board, and I want to call out that their next meeting is at they pushed it back by a week, so their next meeting is on April 19th at 6 p.m. Just pushed back by a week due to scheduling. So. Exciting things going on there. You kind of stole my thunder a little bit with the skate park groundbreaking, and as we gear up and get ready for summer, exciting to see people and organizations and youth out in our parks. So that concludes my reports.
And the parks, the rec grants just closed. So
Rec grants did just close, and I do not have information on the status of those, but keep you on the edge of your seat for that next meeting.
They'll find out. That's great.
Thank you.
Councilor Oberst.
Saturday the 15th, 1 o'clock. Plant trees. Just a reminder.
Good. It's our urban renewal agency. Folks there. Anybody else? Yes, Councilor Harry.
The Planning Commission meets tomorrow, and they'll be working on and preparing a recommendation to us, to the council, relative to implementation of a housing production strategy. They'll have some ways in which to incent and to fund perhaps, and some of those incentives, I believe, and that will likely, though I don't know, I'd be presupposing, but likely have some impact on our budget process. Because if we're going to provide incentives, that's a different way of spending money than we normally think of. And if it'll work to get housing production up, so be it. Anyway, there'll be a full report on that, and we'll have more information on that. But they're working on that tomorrow night, and it'll be coming forward soon. So just a heads up.
All right. And that brings us to our city manager's report. We probably all stole all her thunder.
You know, I find that I don't have that much to report by the time you're all done reporting. And I've also been in the same places that you've been in the last week. I appreciate very much being able to celebrate these milestones on some of these really important community projects and good stuff that's happening. So I will leave it at that. Our department heads meet on the Monday of every council meeting, and I've got lots of updates about things that are happening administratively and stuff coming up that I will save that for our next report.
All right. That brings us to council comments and announcements. Anything going on out there we need to know about, Peacock Lady?
I would guess you're calling on me.
That would be you.
So as part of board and commission report, I was unable to attend the senior board meeting because I was at a demonstration at the museum. I'm also on the Heritage Society Museum Board. There was a demonstration put on by Jim and Amy Dawson. They are instructors here at Western, and they raise raptors. And so they did a raptor demo. There's a wonderful exhibit there on osprey and osprey nesting, and they brought one of their birds. And that leads me into Peacock Festival, May the 20th. Jim and Amy will be some of the participants there doing a demo with their birds as some of the entertainment. There's a million things going on with the Peacock Festival. I have over 40 vendors signed up, which is so exciting. I've had over 700 hits on the website. So this is from boosting the posts. Thank you, everybody that's also been sharing. I can't tell you, I'm just tickled to death that this is really happening and people are very, very excited. The IO is interested in writing up an article, and so we'll be getting more promotion and publicity. Secondly, there are some chamber activities going on. If you don't know, the chamber auction is starting next week. That's an online auction. All kinds of wonderful goodies for sale. There's trips, there's activities. There will be an award ceremony April the 13th. It will be at the Independence Theater. Tickets are still available. You can go to the chamber website and buy your tickets. We will be doing the presentation. The awards, the physical awards are beautiful. I have to say, they're just gorgeous this year. There will also be a silent auction at the theater. You'll get a little charcuterie box with some goodies in it. You'll get a bag to carry them in and drinks and all of that. And then we'll be showing a first run movie. We will be showing Air, the movie about Nike's development. So if you don't have a ticket yet, go to the website, get a ticket. I think that's everything.
All right.
I'm sure there's more.
Other announcements.
Vehicles are being tracked as we speak. Nice work, Marty.
Wow,
Get
look
on
at that
it,
for
man. Way to get
result.
on it.
Marty sent him a text and said, you better fix this now.
I just want to say Chariots has been a great partner and has been right alongside us trying to get everything up and rolling. So thanks for checking that out.
Councillor Oberst.
Go ahead,
Councillor
Carol.
McKeel.
I'm just going to read that.
Oh.
Go ahead.
So two things. I had reason for a haircut, and I was in West Salem today, and I went to a barber shop with a young man, well, young to me, had the TV showing endless videos of people on skateboards, which caused me to comment about a certain upcoming skate park, to which he said, I know, I'm really looking forward to that. And he knew the designer and so on. So the skate community is aware of what we're doing, and they're going to be here in force, I think, once it's ready to go. The only other thing is I've talked to some of you. I know you're all on tenterhooks. My alma mater went to the Division III national title game, and they won. Woo! So,
Fancy.
yeah. So I'm pretty sure this is the first national title in anything for my little university, but it's fun. I'm headed back to the Bluegrass. Unfortunately, I will miss by one day their welcome home parade or whatever. So anyway, it's just fun. You know, it's been fun watching it. And I want to thank Counselor Carey for kind of joining me in, even though neither one of us knows any of the players, and John has probably never been to Transylvania University, but it was fun to have you along with the ride, John. Thanks.
Let the record show that Councilor Oberst is the definition of a front runner, because had they not won that championship, he may not have been going back. So, but
No,
now
I was
they've
going
won it.
back regardless.
Counselor McKeel.
Yes, and I would just like to read the land acknowledgement, if I can actually speak clearly enough to do this. Monmouth, Oregon is located within the traditional homeland of the Luckimoot Band of Kalapuya. Following the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855, Kalapuya people were forcibly removed to the reservations in Western Oregon. Today, living descendants of these people are part of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederate Tribes of the Siletz Indians. And I would just like to add that descendants of these people continue to contribute to our community every day.
Thank you. And with that, a motion to adjourn the council.
Move adjourn.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned. Can we power on through and seat the Urban Renewal Agency Board and continue there? I would like to call to order the Tuesday, April 4th meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency and ask Phyllis Bowman for the roll call, please.
Ms. Belts,
Here.
Mr. Carey,
Here.
Mr. Lopez,
Here.
Ms. McKeel,
Here.
Mr. Oberst,
Here.
Ms. Salinas Oliveros is excused, and Chairwoman Kuntz.
I am present. Do we have any citizen comments for the Urban Renewal Agency?
None have been received or online.
Okay, thank you very much. The last time that we met as the Urban Renewal Agency was January 17th. The minutes of that meeting were included in your packet, and I didn't see anything to change or amend.
I'd like to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you, Ms. McKeel,
Second.
and thank you for the second, Mr. Oberst. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
And none opposed. We shall move forward. We have one item on our business agenda this evening. Suzanne Duffner, our Community and Economic Development Director, will introduce the request for the stuff we love to do, which is give away money.
Yay. Yes, this is the fun part. Right? Well, good evening. Thank you. Yes, I am here to present the staff report for a general grant assistance request. This is for a commercial property located in the 1200 block of Main Street East. You may be more familiar with it as the former Central Vet Clinic on the corner there, is right before the S-curves. There's been some great stuff going on with that building. They've been the owners who are with us tonight, Vincent and Tanya Bordadora. Sorry if I slaughtered your last name. Sounded out here. They have been doing some great things with that building. You probably noticed it as you go down East Main Street. It's very visible where there's a lot of activity going on with the S-curve. So they've been remodeling that building from the former vet clinic, and now they're doing spaces for 3 different commercial tenants. We have the Doggy Dreams dog grooming business that has opened up, and it seems to be doing really well. And Sundu Tattoo Parlor is also in there as a second commercial space. And then they're getting ready to open up a 3rd space, which would be for a coffee shop as well. So just real good example of reusing a building and providing more job opportunities and economic development in our community for new small businesses. So really excited that they chose to pursue the General Grant Assistance Program as they're finishing up their project, they have some remaining checklist items that could use some assistance, leveraged assistance with. Specifically, they're looking at making repairs to their parking lot drainage. They're having issues with puddling and pooling near the entryway and in the parking lot that makes accessibility difficult into the building. And they also had some dry rot siding that they're needing to replace and paint on the north and west facing walls of the building. So, and then they would also be creating new accessible with people with accessibilities or ADA, excuse me, parking space improvements and signage that's required by ADA requirements. So some great upgrades to that building. The total project cost for those estimates, or total estimated project cost for those improvements, is just under $16,000, and they're asking for 50% of that, which would be $7,978, which meets our grant requirements that at least 50% of the project be paid by private sources to leverage those urban renewal funds. As noted in the staff report, the project is consistent with our urban renewal goals. As I mentioned, it's increasing business activity through the creation of 3 new commercial business spaces and new employment opportunities associated with those. There's additional information on the proposed improvements and some photos that the applicant has provided for further clarification in your packet. Staff is recommending approval through our normal grant requirements to enter into an agreement, and this is a reimbursable grant. So we will go out and inspect that the improvements have been completed as proposed and that it meets all building code requirements before it would be reimbursed for the 50% of the grant costs. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions. And as I mentioned, we have the applicants are very faithful. They unfortunately on transit on the way tonight they got a flat tire. So they are very dedicated in that they made it here despite the transportation challenges. So thank you for them for
They
being
live out of town, or they could have bought the trolley.
already. Have to hook them up with that.
Any questions of staff regarding the project, or we do have the applicants if you have specific questions about the project.
Don't have anything.
I think it's pretty clear. I counted to 10, so I'm ready to make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. McKeel.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the general assistance grant application as recommended by staff.
Second.
And can I ask if you would amend that to include the dollar amount?
Oh, yes, sorry. I moved that we approve the general assistance grant application as recommended by staff with the dollar amount of,
7,000.
it says approximately. Oh, I'm sorry. I am reading the wrong thing complete. I'm going to start a third time's the charm. I move to approve the general assistance grant application for $7,978 for the proposed commercial remodel located at 1270 to 1282 Main Street East.
Second.
Thank you for the
Sorry that it took 3 times.
thank you for the amended second, Mr. Lopez. And any questions?
It involves coffee, so I'm in favor.
Coffee is
Coffee
good.
shop, yep.
Oh,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
Yeah, as we know, this
My neighborhood too.
$17,000, only the parking lot part. They're obviously investing a great deal more to make that a coffee shop. And yes, very exciting. All right, all in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And I see here none opposed, so motion carries.
Thank you.
Add
Pour the
bagels and
do
we'll
good
be
brew.
thrilled.
We will all look forward to the ribbon cutting there. And yeah,
Join the-
get that. And thank you for doing ADA work. We also
Absolutely.
appreciate
Yes.
Yes.
that. Up to snuff. All right. Unless there are any announcements for the Urban Renewal Agency.
I have a question about that.
Okay.
There's a urban LOC is sponsoring a urban renewal workshop sort of a thing. Anybody have any sense whether that would be a valuable deal for one or more of us to participate in?
I've not attended one.
It's an
I haven't-
online deal.
Yeah.
I think I've watched one of the videos before. They posted all their videos during COVID, and they were viewable for free. If memory serves me correct, it was valuable, but of limited use based on how deep we are through our URA kind of process here. So it was more geared toward communities that were just developing.
Just beginning, okay.
Or potentially some
Or-
cities have a completely separate urban renewal board
Right,
Mm.
okay.
that operates separately,
Yeah.
again, from the level we do. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Good information though. But
Yeah, well, but we
yeah.
got a pretty good handle on it, I think.
Go with it.
I mentioned Transylvania. You wanted
Yeah. All right. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is anyone else going to LFC and Seaside besides me?